During the 5 decades following World War II, the Missile Test and Evaluation Facility at Point Mugu has been the site of most of the United States Navy's major achievements in missile developments. The event that marked the beginning of those developments came in 1936. Chief of Naval Operations Admiral William F. Stanley, on a visit to Great Britain, witnessed the use of remotely controlled unmanned aircraft as targets for anti-aircraft gunners of the Royal Navy. Immediately thereafter, he initiated action for development of similar targets for the U.S. Navy. Lieutenant Commander Delmer S. Farney, later to be Rear Admiral, then head of the Bureau of Aeronautics Special Design Branch, was assigned to carry out Admiral Stanley's request. Under his leadership, the first United States fully successful flight of a remotely controlled unmanned aircraft occurred on November 15, 1937. Failure of Navy anti-aircraft fire to destroy drones of this type during pre-war exercises led to the realization that they could be used as offensive weapons. In October 1944, in the South Pacific, the assault drone became the first U.S. missile to be used against forces in combat. Other missile programs started during the war included the air-launched Gargoyle, the anti-kamikaze Little Joe, the family of Gorgon missiles, the surface-launched Lark, and the Navy's version of the German V-1 buzz bomb, the Loon. With the expansion of the U.S. Navy's guided missile program, it became evident an overwater test range would be needed. Commander, later Captain Grayson Merrill, Farney's replacement as the head of the Bureau of Aeronautics Special Design Branch, initiated a search for the location of such a facility. A site survey board evaluated 26 potential locations, then selected Point Mugu. The area of Point Mugu is rich in history. Early inhabitants, the Chumash Indians, greeted the Spanish explorer Juan Rodriguez Cabrillo, who sailed into the Mugu Lagoon in 1542. The area surrounding Mugu was soon devoted to agriculture, while Point Mugu became a popular recreation site. By the 1930s, a fish camp was established featuring a 350-foot-long pier and a string of small overnight huts for use by local fishermen. Following the Site Survey Board's recommendation, the Navy Secretary endorsed Point Mugu with its broad beachfront and close proximity to the Channel Islands as the location of the missile test facility. On May 24, 1946, President Truman approved this selection. Military activity had come to the Point Mugu area early in World War II. Military units such as the Navy Seabees used the beaches for simulated combat maneuvers. A 5,000-foot Marsden mat runway, a wooden hangar, and numerous Quonset huts were built and later used by the new missile center. On October 1, 1946, Captain Albert Perkins read his orders to men and officers directing the establishment of the Naval Air Missile Test Center. They were a can-do crew, and even with the barest of facilities, they proceeded to get on with testing of the Loon, Lark, Gorgon, and a number of new small target drones. On February 12, 1947, just off the Mugu coast, a Loon became the first missile to be launched from a submarine. When Congress approved construction funds in June 1948, the transformation of Point Mugu into a well-equipped facility was underway. Construction continued until 1953, producing the addition of many new structures. While new buildings were going up and asphalt roads being put in, the job of instrumenting the sea test range proceeded at the same rate. A short range with a 15-mile radius from Point Mugu was quickly instrumented to support the early test efforts. The Lark also made a significant guided missile first. On September 18, 1951, one was launched from Point Mugu, using its semi-active radar guidance to score a direct hit on a drone version of an F-6F World War II fighter. Optical tracking and recordings were made with Ascania Cine theodolites that were taken from the German missile test site at Peenemünde after the war. Radar tracking was accomplished using World War II SCR-584 anti-aircraft tracking radars. By the end of the 1950s, the full-size range reaching out 150 miles was in place. There was a new complex of telemetry receiving stations, upgraded cine theodolite cameras, mobile tracking units, and a modernized timing facility for live data coordination. Displacing the old World War II missile programs were the Sparrow family of air-to-air missiles and the Regulus submarine-launched bombardment missiles. These high-priority programs made the bulk of the workload and excitement at the Naval Air Missile Test Center during the 1950s. The Regulus period at Point Mugu ended in December 1958, when the Department of Defense decided that the Polaris submarine-launched ballistic missile fulfilled the mission. The Bullpup air-to-surface missile was developed because of a need for a standoff weapon to destroy bridges near the Chinese border during the Korean War. Developmental testing was conducted at Point Mugu prior to the missile being deployed with the FJB as the launch aircraft. In 1951, Commander Clifton Evans Jr. started the first permanent, ongoing program developing countermeasure systems for evaluating missile guidance systems. The growth of expertise in this area soon had them developing actual electronic countermeasures for operational use. Recognition of this capability led to the center being chartered to develop airborne electronic warfare systems in the 1960s, and to the approval and construction of the Point Mugu Modern Electronic Warfare Laboratory in the late 1980s. A leader since its inception in the test, evaluation, and operational use of airborne targets, the Naval Air Missile Test Center led the way in turning the newer target drones into systems that more realistically simulated actual threats. The breakthrough toward modern target drones at Point Mugu came in 1952 with the assignment of the Ryan turbojet Firebee for test and evaluation. By the mid-1950s, the need for longer-range missiles and test facilities was apparent. Point Mugu was selected to be the hub for the new Pacific Missile Range. Officially established June 1958, this new Pacific Missile Range would serve all U.S. military services, NASA, and other federal agencies. It extended 5,000 miles out to the Mariana Islands and covered the length of the U.S. Pacific coastline. Personnel hiring was accelerated. New facilities were acquired. Existing ones upgraded. And far-flung operating bases were established. Instrumentation was installed at 17 land sites from the U.S. Pacific coast to the islands of Hawaii, Eniwetok, Midway, Johnson, and Wake. Far-off ocean impact measuring systems were developed, and a fleet of 10 converted wartime Liberty ships and 5 aircraft were equipped for instrumentation and ocean recovery over the broad Pacific area. Major weapon systems using the new range included Polaris, Titan, Thor, Minuteman, Transit, and Nike Zeus. NASA weighed in with their Mercury, Gemini, Tyros, and Telstar programs. In the summer of 1963, President John F. Kennedy, who had cited the missile gap and the need for preparedness during his 1960 presidential campaign, visited the Pacific Missile Range for a first-hand inspection. When the Pacific Missile Range was formed, the remaining elements of the Naval Air Missile Test Center were reestablished in January 1959 as the Naval Missile Center, retaining the basic Point Mugu mission of test and evaluation of Navy air weapons. Superseding the Sparrow as the dominant test and evaluation program at the renamed Naval Missile Center in the mid-1960s was the F-14 Phoenix weapon system. The supersonic F-14, at that time the Navy's most advanced fighter, was designed to carry 6 air-to-air Phoenix missiles while effecting the combat air patrol mission of protecting the fleet. The Systems Integration Test Station, SITS, was developed to satisfy the complex testing requirements of the F-14 Phoenix system. Located on the third floor of Building 761, looking toward the ocean, the station consists of an F-14 fuselage containing the hardware and software for the avionics, fire control, and electronic warfare. Operations are made against attack aircraft flying toward the station's large open doors. This innovative concept was later replicated at several test bases. The ability of the F-14 Phoenix to acquire, track, and launch multiple missiles against individual targets was demonstrated in 1973. The exercise was called 6 on 6. 6 missiles were launched in ripple fire against 6 separate targets. It was considered successful as 4 of the missiles made direct kills. Other missiles undergoing test and evaluation during this period included Harpoon, which came in 1970 as an anti-ship missile intended for launch from aircraft, ships, and submarines. The subsonic Harpoon became operational in 1977. Both the Harpoon and the later developed Tomahawk cruise missile proved to be highly effective during the Gulf War. The Walleye was a television-guided air-to-surface missile that was designed for use against high-priority targets. Assigned to the Naval Missile Center in 1966, the evaluation phase was completed in 4 years and approved for fleet operation. Test and evaluation were also conducted on the Sidewinder and the Standard missile that had been developed at the Naval Ordnance Test Station, China Lake. The Sea Sparrow was first proposed in 1955 as a surface-to-air alteration of the air-to-air Sparrow. This concept was finally accepted in 1965 when its test phase began. The system became operational early in 1970. By the end of the 1960s, the national defense focus was shifting from strategic to tactical warfare. The space race with the Soviets was over, and the U.S. ballistic missile systems were now in place. At the same time, a presidential Blue Ribbon Commission determined that greater emphasis was needed in the field of weapons test and evaluation. These two factors, along with the potential of overhead cost reductions, were evident in the decision to consolidate the Naval Missile Center and the Pacific Missile Range into the Pacific Missile Test Center on April 25, 1975. Standing out among the new programs assigned to the Pacific Missile Test Center was Tomahawk. This subsonic, very low altitude, low radar profile weapon was the most versatile of Navy missiles ever. Initially, it was to be a torpedo tube-launched anti-ship weapon, but its evident potential brought about numerous other configurations and missions, such as land attack, air and ground launching, vertical launching, armored box launching, nuclear, and submunitions warheads. The Advanced Medium-Range Air-to-Air Missile, AMRAAM, is unique among major programs at the Pacific Missile Test Center in that it originated not with the naval community, but rather with the Air Force. Having used the Navy's Sparrow and Sidewinder, the Air Force initiated development of the AMRAAM to exceed those two weapons in all facets of operational usage. The Department of Defense soon directed that it be a multi-service weapon compatible with both Air Force and Navy fighters. Under this arrangement, AMRAAM's test and evaluation was shared with Eglin Air Force Base, White Sands Missile Range, and China Lake Land Range. A successful 4-on-4 missiles versus targets flight test was conducted at Point Mugu in 1989. HARM, the Navy's current high-performance anti-radiation missile, represents the culmination of a series of like weapons such as BAT, Corvus Arm, Shrike, and Standard Arm that have been tested at Point Mugu. The HARM, carrying a terminal homing device that permits a launch and leave capability, was effective against Libyan targets in 1986 and saw extensive use in 1991 by the Air Force and Navy during the Persian Gulf War. The Mobile Sea Range, MSR, developed during the 1970s, carried much of Point Mugu's range capability to wide open ocean areas. This permitted the fleet to engage in operational testing and safe training in realistic combat situations around the globe. The operator-controlled drones simulates hostile missiles and monitors all enemy actions, including jamming. The system could reconstruct an exercise for later study and evaluation. The Extended Area Test System, EATS, came into being after it became evident with the inception of the Harpoon and Tomahawk programs that testing beyond the nominal 150-mile radius of the sea test range would be required. Started in 1972 and completed in the early 80s, the EATS is a multilateration tracking system operating over the horizon in an area covered by a 250-mile radius from San Nicolas Island. It can track up to 60 ships, aircraft, and targets from sea level to 100,000 feet, relay drone control messages, and transfer telemetry data from up to 15 remotely controlled vehicles. The art and science of electronic warfare fully matured at the Pacific Missile Test Center with the establishment of the Electronic Warfare Directorate in 1983 and the completion of the modern Electronic Warfare Laboratory in 1988. The EA-6B Prowler aircraft carries a Point Mugu developed electronic warfare system. This system is controlled with software developed at Point Mugu's special EA-6B Weapon Systems Support Laboratory. The new Missile Systems Evaluation Laboratory building was completed in 1991. It features 4 individual closed-loop, hardware-in-the-loop laboratories. Each has an anechoic chamber, target signal emitters, and a 3-axis flight table for mounting a missile head. The missile operating characteristics and the environments are controlled through a central computer. Most notable is the enormous bistatic chamber that delivers a singular capability. This radar reflectivity lab can render a uniquely detailed radar signature analysis. With the slowdown of the Cold War and then the collapse of the Soviet Union in 1990, there was a clear case for reduction of U.S. military forces and bases. The Naval Air Systems Command responded with a proposal to consolidate most of its field activities for research, development, test, and evaluation into a single organization called the Naval Air Warfare Center. The organizational design that evolved had 2 major divisions: the Naval Air Warfare Center Aircraft Division, centered on the East Coast, and the Naval Air Warfare Center Weapons Division on the West Coast. The latter division was formed by consolidation of the Pacific Missile Test Center, the Naval Weapons Center China Lake, the Naval Weapons Evaluation Facility Albuquerque, and the Naval Ordnance Test Station at White Sands. Operating under a single commander, research and development is centered at China Lake, while test and evaluation and management of ranges and targets is centered at Point Mugu. Since assuming custodianship of the lands comprising Point Mugu, the command has remained diligent to its responsibilities to the environment. The Navy has endeavored to provide conscientious stewardship of the unique environmental assets of Point Mugu's lagoon, marshes, and the unique flora, wildlife, and archaeological sites on the mainland and the Channel Islands under its control. Point Mugu stands as a tribute to the men and women who have applied their knowledge and skills to the development, test and evaluation, and support of the nation's weapons systems. The center's real infrastructure is neither facilities nor equipment, but the people who made it happen. This human asset was and is comprised of people who are proud of their contributions. 50 years of devotion and excellence have provided the fleet with a proven superior edge in battle and a reassurance that these weapons work.
Excuse me, sir, where's Mugu?
Where's Mugu? Confounded fellow, are you blind?
Welcome to the Naval Air Warfare Center Weapons Division at Point Mugu. NOC Weapons Division provides range services for sea surface, sea subsurface, land,
Release.
and air test and training operations
Weapon away.
with near-perfect weather for year-round testing. The Sea Range comprises 36,000 square miles of controlled operational airspace and sea surface area. Instrumented coverage can be extended to 125,000 square miles. Point Mugu consists of 4,500 acres, support facilities, and instrumentation, and includes 1,500-foot-high Laguna Peak, a heavily instrumented site which provides optics coverage, telemetry, airborne and surface target control, radio communications and data transmission, surveillance radar, and command transmitter system CTS for command destruct. Two key islands, San Nicolas Island SNI and Santa Cruz Island SCI, play an important role in supporting the NOC Weapons Sea Range mission. Their remote locations provide a relatively interference-free environment for range instrumentation covering the Sea Range. SNI is located 65 nautical miles southwest of Point Mugu. The main facilities include a 10,000-foot runway, an air terminal, housing, and other necessary base support functions. SNI is heavily instrumented with metric tracking and surveillance radars, GPS ground sites, optics, telemetry, and communications necessary to support a variety of weapons testing and fleet training. Capabilities include launch of subscale and unmanned full-scale targets and launch sites for surface-launched weapons. A high-bandwidth fiber optic infrastructure provides connectivity with Point Mugu and other DoD facilities.
Point Mugu sets up the range operations, schedules the test, cooperates with the Navy in getting the combat system, ship qualification trials accomplished, and the fleet practices accomplished. And we've been able to rely on them to get it done right the first time.
The real reason we use a range at Point Mugu, there's a couple reasons. One of them is an overwater range, and a lot of the software that obviously the Navy uses has to do with overwater targets, whether it be ship targets or other air-to-air targets. And it's important for us to test overwater to make sure the weapons behave as they should over water.
Point Mugu's instrumented overwater sea range is integrated with multiple state-of-the-art laboratories, which provide the customers with decision quality data and all the essential capability they need to meet their program requirements. One such laboratory, the Radar Reflectivity Lab, ensures that targets used on the Sea Range accurately represent the threats that will be faced in combat. The laboratory has the only bistatic radar cross-section chamber in the world.
We use the ranges, we can come back to these facilities, use these facilities to analyze our data and to compare them to what we actually saw to what we should be seeing. Having the facilities here right next to the ranges allows us to do this on a real-time basis. In a day or two, we can do all the testing right here in this one facility that, had it been spread around, would take several weeks to do.
The combination of our technologically advanced laboratories and Sea Range assets give Point Mugu customers the perfect mix to ensure the most reliable, lowest cost, most advanced weapon systems transition to U.S. operational forces and those of our allies. An invaluable Sea Range test asset, the self-defense test ship operated by NAVC out of Port Hueneme is used for testing ship defense systems on the Sea Range. Here, the close-in weapon system intercepts an incoming Vandal target launched from San Nicolas Island. The Point Mugu complex provides the ideal test location for hundreds of major programs for the Navy. Air Force, NASA, and the Missile Defense Agency, and foreign allies as well. As a complement to our testing work, fleet training exercises, including live firings, are conducted on the open ocean Sea Range. From the Point Mugu launch facility, the Japanese Defense Force launches its SSM-1 surface-to-surface missile directly into 100% military-controlled airspace and impacts a surface target on the Sea Range. Millennium Challenge 2002 was a joint experiment and field exercise designed to test some of the key strategic concepts and capabilities of the future joint forces. The Joint Operations Live Technical Control was based and conducted from the Point Mugu Sea Range. The combined assets of the Point Mugu Integrated Test Complex are not duplicated in any other facility, range, or complex in the world.
The NOC at Point Mugu is a sister range to us here at Vandenberg, and literally without them, we cannot do our mission. As a sister range, they provide a host of support to include things like telemetry antennas, radar for tracking data, as well as a command transmitter so we can command and control our assets to ensure the public safety and this mission success. In addition to that, some of the key areas we get outstanding support from Point Mugu include P3. The P3 Orion assets there, first of all, provide outstanding telemetry support. In addition, we have other P3 birds that fly out of the NOC that support us for optics and video. So we use them not only for the Titan IV program, but a host of others.
This vast array of infrastructure, including a 10,000-foot runway, ordnance handling, and missile launch facilities, and an operations control center, provides our customers with a fully instrumented, tactically relevant battle space, with a combination of open ocean and littoral environments to accomplish the many challenges of aircraft and weapon system testing now and into the 21st century. The personnel and infrastructure of the NAVAIR Sea Range at Point Mugu are inextricably linked to the facilities and geography, and provide a unique, world-class environment for aircraft and weapons testing that will enable the warfighter to reign supreme and return in glory.